Thank you for joining us on this edition of News Today. Without delay, let's explore the headlines that are shaping the current news landscape. Ministry of Jal Shakti has empowered National Mission for Clean Ganga Mission to allow treated sewage into water bodies. The Supreme Court has questioned Centre on GM mustard. The Supreme Court has asked for Centre's response on Kerala's suit against state's borrowing capacity. The first ever IUCN assessment of the Himalayan wolf was published. Standing Committee on Petroleum and Natural Gas report emphasizes on Strategic Petroleum Reserves or SPR for energy security. A study shows that in 2023, global ocean heat content has doubled or tripled since the late 1980s. Starting with the first news. Ministry of Jal Shakti has empowered National Mission for Clean Ganga Mission to allow treated sewage into water bodies. The notification amended the earlier River Ganga Rejuvenation, Protection and Management Authority's Order 2016. It amended the provision that no person shall discharge, directly or indirectly, any untreated or treated sewage into the river. Now it will permit the discharge of the treated effluent with prescribed standards into the river after exploring the options of its direct reuse for purposes such as agricultural and industrial use. The move will ensure more water flow into the rivers, thereby improving its biodiversity. Let's dive into more related information about the Namami Gange program. The program was launched into 2014 to rejuvenate River Ganga and its tributaries by 2021. Currently, it is extended up to 2026. Its pillars include sewage treatment, riverfront development, river surface cleaning, afforestation, biodiversity, public awareness, effluent management, and Ganga Gram. Ahead now, let's talk about the National Mission for Clean Ganga. It was registered as a society in 2011 under Societies Registration Act 1860 and functions under the aegis of Ministry of Jal Shakti. Its aim and objective are abatement of pollution and rejuvenation of River Ganga by adopting a river basin approach and to maintain minimum ecological flows in the river to ensure its water quality. It acts as the implementation arm of National Ganga River Basin Authority. It consists of a two-tier management structure which comprises of a governing council and executive committee, both headed by the Director General of National Mission for Clean Ganga. In our next news, the Supreme Court has questioned Centre on GM mustard. The Supreme Court questioned whether the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee or GEAC had considered reports of court-appointed Technical Experts Committee before approving transgenic mustard hybrid DMH11 for environmental release. Earlier in 2022, the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee had recommended environmental release of DMH11. Before proceeding, first let's know about the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It is a statutory body under the Environment Protection Act 1986. It is responsible for appraisal of proposals relating to the release of GM organisms and products into environment. It functions under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Let's also know about DMH11, which is a transgenic mustard herbicide-tolerant variant developed by Delhi University that has undergone genetic modification. It has two alien genes, Barnase and Barster, isolated from soil bacterium called Bacillus amyloleucofaciens. GMO or genetically modified organism is a plant, animal or microbe in which one or more changes have been made to the genome to alter characteristics of an organism. Transgenic refers to an organism whose genome has been altered by the introduction of one or more foreign DNA sequences from other species by artificial means. Now let's know about the process involved for approval of transgenic crops. Safety assessments by committees which are conducted before open field tests. Transgenic plants must be better than non-GM variants and environmentally safe for commercial clearance. Then, GAAC recommends environmental release and the final approval is given by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now let's talk about the benefits of GM crops, which include resistance against plant diseases, improved yields and increased food security. Moving on to the next news. The Supreme Court has asked for Centre's response on Kerala's suit against state's borrowing capacity. Kerala government argued amendments in 2018 made to Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003 imposing a net borrowing ceiling is an encroachment into legislative domain of state. Public debt of the state is an item in the state list under Article 246 of the Constitution. Now let's discuss about the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management or FRBM Act 2003. It was enacted to provide for the responsibility of the central government to ensure intergenerational equity in fiscal management and long-term macroeconomic stability. It puts limits on central government borrowings, debt and deficits. The 2018 amendment to Act limits combined debt to GDP ratio of centre and states to 60% by 2024-25, which is 40% for centre and 20% for states. Also, states have their own FRBM Acts, modeled after the central government's FRBM Act. Now let's have a look at some other tools of fiscal federalism. These are Finance Commission transfers, intergovernmental transfers, which include various grants and loans provided by the central government to states and local bodies. Article 293 Clause 2 empowers the central government to make loans to any state and give guarantees for state loans. Article 293 Clause 3 restricts states from borrowing without the consent of central government if they have outstanding loans or guarantees from the central government. Moving on to the next news. The first ever IUCN assessment of the Himalayan wolf was published. The major findings of the report address some serious issue. Let's have a look at them. IUCN's assessment has flagged a continuing decline in area, extent, and/or quality of habitat of Himalayan wolves. The estimated total population of mature individuals is in the range of 2,275 to 3,792 and 227 to 378 in India. The Himalayan wolf also face some major threats, which include depredation conflict, which happens due to habitat modification and encroachment and depletion of wild prey populations. Hybridization with dogs, especially in Ladakh and Spiti, where populations of feral dogs are increasing. And illegal hunting for trading its fur and body parts, including paws, tongues, and heads. Further now, let's understand more about the Himalayan wolf. They are found in high altitude in the Himalayas, in Nepal, India, and the Tibetan Plateau. They possess genetic adaptations to cope with hypoxic conditions. They have thick fur with brown coloration on the back and tail, with paler yellow on the face, limbs, and underside. They are larger than the Indian and the European wolves, and they prefer wild over domestic prey. As per the IUCN's Red List, they are categorized as vulnerable, and they are protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 and under Appendix 1 of CITES. At last, let's also have a look at the measures suggested for the protection of Himalayan wolves. The measures include securing and restoring healthy wild prey populations and landscapes, transboundary efforts in the conservation of species in range countries, and to incorporate the Himalayan wolf in conservation programs. Moving on, Standing Committee on Petroleum and Natural Gas report emphasizes on Strategic Petroleum Reserves or SPR for energy security. Strategic petroleum reserves are crude oil storages that would be in addition to storages of crude oil with oil marketing companies or OMCs. These are established in India through Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserve Limited, a special purpose vehicle under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Let's start by first talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserves in India. In Phase 1, SPRs set up in 3 locations, which are Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, Mangalore, and Padur in Karnataka. And in Phase 2, SPRs are planned in Chandikhol in Odisha and Padur. Current SPR capacity of India is equivalent to meet only 9.5 days of national demand as per 2019-20. In addition, oil marketing companies have storage facilities for crude oil and petroleum products for 64.5 days. Hence, the current total national capacity for storage of crude oil and petroleum products is 74 days. International Energy Agency necessitates to ensure that oil stock, that is crude oil plus refined product, levels are equivalent to 90 days of imports. Now that we know about SPRs, let's understand and talk about their significance. They ensure energy security during crisis, insulate economy from crude price volatility, and can be leased out to oil companies for storage when required. There are also some challenges in setting up SPRs in India. These include high capital and establishment cost, issues of land acquisition for Phase 2, and locations far from existing refineries increase transportation cost. Moving on to the next news. A study shows that in 2023, global ocean heat content has doubled or tripled since the late 1980s. Let's start by first looking into the key findings of the study. The amount of heat stored in the upper 2000 meters of the global ocean reached 286 zettajoules in 2023 relative to the 1981-2010 average. The 2023 estimate of ocean heat content represent around 4.6 billion Hiroshima nuclear bombs. As oceans absorb 90% of the heat from global warming, the Atlantic, North and Western Pacific and Southern oceans are warming at a faster rate than the global average. Now let's understand and talk about ocean heat content. It is defined as the total amount of heat absorbed by and stored in the oceans, and measurements of water temperature reflect the amount of heat in the water at a particular time and location. It is measured in joules, the unit of energy. Water has a higher heat capacity than air, which means that it can store much larger amounts of heat. Ahead, let's also discuss about the role of ocean heat content. It affects Earth's energy, water and carbon cycles and act as an important indicator of climate change. When the ocean warms, it releases heat and moisture into the atmosphere, intensifying storms, causing severe weather events. It lowers the level of oxygen in water, and rising ocean temperature directly affect corals. The personality news for today is Savitribai Phule. She was a social activist, reformer, writer, and India's first women teacher from Maharashtra. Now let's have a look at her contributions and achievements. She and her husband, Jyotirao Phule, started the first indigenously run school for girls in Pune in 1848. In 1873, the Phule set up the Satya Shodhak Samaj or Truth Seekers Society to attain equal rights for people from lower castes. She also set up Balyata Prabandhak Graha, a child care center for the protection of pregnant widows and rape victims. Her literary works include Kavya Phule and Bavan Kashi Subodh Ratnakar. She exhibits the values of compassion, courage, and humanism. As we conclude today's main news, let's take a look at some quick updates. State Bank of India has launched the Green Deposit Scheme to mobilize funds for environment-friendly initiatives and projects. It is open to resident individuals, non-individuals, and NRI customers. Green deposit means an interest-bearing deposit received by the regulated entity for a fixed period, proceeds of which are earmarked for being allocated towards green finance. Atal Setu Nava Sheva Sea Link, inaugurated by Prime Minister, is country's longest sea bridge, also referred as Mumbai Trans Harbour Link. It is a 21.8 km long bridge, of which 16.5 km is built completely over the sea. It connects Shivdi in Mumbai with Nava Sheva in Raigad district, thereby easing travel between Mumbai and Navi Mumbai. Defence Research and Development Organisation conducted successful flight test of the Akash NG missile. Akash NG is a surface-to-air missile capable of intercepting high-speed, agile aerial threats. It has a range of around 80 km. Akash weapon system is short-range surface-to-air missile air defense system indigenously designed and developed by DRDO. An Indian delegation visits Hawaii to discuss the progress of 30-meter telescope project. It is a new class of extremely large telescopes that will allow seeing deeper into space and observing cosmic objects with unprecedented sensitivity. It is a joint venture of 5 countries: India, Canada, US, China, and Japan. It is being installed in Mauna Kea in Hawaii. Scientists have found a new approach to explore cold dark matter. It is a hypothetical dark matter that constitutes 25% of the current universe. Cold or hot refers to the fact that particles of cold dark matter move at speeds much lower than the speed of light. It is very difficult to determine what constitutes the cold dark matter. One of the promising candidates of cold dark matter is weakly interacting massive particles. Conjoined silver line, a new butterfly species identified in Karnataka's Kodgu district. It is the first such find in Western Ghats in the last 4 decades. It consists of fused spots and bands on underside of the wing and shiny silver lines in the center of those bands. While males have dark shining blue wings, females have dark brown wings. Humboldt's enigma was proposed by Alexander von Humboldt, stating that mountain regions generally display higher diversity than tropical regions. While the conventional belief is that the world's tropical areas have greater productivity and diversity, the proponents of Humboldt's enigma hold that many areas outside the tropics are also highly biodiverse. The Prime Minister visited the Kalaram Mandir on the banks of the Godavari, Nashik in Maharashtra. The temple was built in 1782 by Sardar Rangarao Odekar on the site of an old wooden temple. It is supposed to stand on the spot where Lord Ram lived during his exile. It derives its name from the black statue of the Lord Ram. The temple is also the site of a landmark agitation led by Baba Saheb Ambedkar demanding temple entry rights for Dalits more than 90 years ago. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.